On the 26th of June, 1974, a mid-sized German bank called Bankhaus Herstatt was ordered into liquidation. It was shut down at 3:30 in the afternoon Frankfurt time. That specific hour is why the whole world of fine and still remembers this bank, because earlier that same day, other banks had done currency trades with Herstatt. They had already paid Herstatt their Deutschmarks in Europe that morning. In return, they were owed US dollars to be delivered later that day in New York, where the business day was still going. But when Herstatt was closed at 3:30 Frankfurt time, its bank in New York simply stopped making those dollar payments. So the counterparties had handed over one side of the trade in full and would never receive the other side, not their profit, the entire amount. A gap between two time zones had swallowed real money, and it revealed a flaw hiding inside every single currency trade on Earth. Here is the flaw, and it is deceptively simple. When you trade one currency for another, it feels like a single swap. It is not. It is two completely separate one-way payments in two different banking systems, often in two different time zones. You send the currency you sold, they send the currency you bought. Those two payments are not glued together. Nothing in the plumbing forces them to happen at the same instant. So there's always a window, sometimes hours long, where you have paid your side but have not yet received theirs. If your counterparty collapses inside that window, you do not just lose the gain on the trade. You lose the full face value of what you paid out because you gave real money and got nothing back. That is why this is called principal risk or settlement risk. The amount exposed isn't at the small price move, it is the entire principal. Herstatt gave the risk its nickname, Herstatt risk. And once regulators saw how one failure rippled through everyone who had traded with that bank, they realized this was not a German problem. It was a design flaw in global finance. Now scale the flaw up to the size of the actual market and your stomach drops. The foreign exchange market is the largest market in the world. According to the Bank for International Settlements, global FX turnover averaged $7.5 trillion a day in April 2022, and by April 2025 it had climbed to about $9.6 trillion a day, up 28% in 3 years. The US dollar sits on one side of roughly 89% of all those trades. And when you count the gross payment obligations that actually have to be settled each day across both legs, the figure is even larger, more than $14 trillion a day. Every one of those trades is two unglued payments. So the Herstatt window, that gap between paying and being paid, is not a rare edge case. It is stretched across trillions of dollars every business day, spanning Tokyo, London, and New York. The question the whole system had to answer after 1974 was blunt. How do you glue the two legs of a trade together so that one can never settle without the other? The answer is an idea called payment versus payment, and it is beautifully strict. The principle is this: the final payment of the first currency happens if, and only if, the final payment of the second currency also happens. The two legs become all or nothing. Either both settle together, or neither settles. That single rule vaporizes principal risk, because you can never be left having paid without receiving. First, in the immediate aftermath of Herstatt, regulators built the institutions to think about this. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision was set up at the end of 1974. But the machine that actually delivers payment versus payment came later. In 2002, a special purpose bank called CLS went live, running a system called CLS Settlement. Here is how it works. The world's big currency banks funnel their trades into CLS. CLS holds accounts in each currency, and as settlement, it releases each leg only against the other simultaneously on its own books. If one side's money is not there, the linked leg does not move. On top of that, CLS nets everyone down, so instead of thousands of gross payments, members fund only their small net difference. CLS today settles 18 major currencies, and by its own figures handles well over $8 trillion of payments a day. While its netting shrinks, the cash members actually need to move by more than 96%. Herstatt risk for the trades that go through this pipe essentially disappears. So is the problem solved? Mostly, but not entirely, and the leftover is the interesting part. The BIS looked at how the roughly $14 trillion of daily settlement obligations actually get settled in April 2025. About 36%, some $5.2 trillion a day, went through true payment versus payment, where the risk is genuinely eliminated. Another 54%, around $7.5 trillion, use methods that reduce the risk without fully removing it. Things like settling inside the same banking group or netting trades down before settlement. And then there is the tail. Roughly 10%, about $1.4 trillion every single day, still settles the old-fashioned way, gross and bilateral, fully exposed to exactly the risk that killed those Herstatt counterparties in 1974. The single biggest reason that money is unprotected is simply that the counterparty has no access, direct or indirect, to a payment versus payment system. The good news is the long trend. On a comparable basis, the share settling in that fully exposed, gross bilateral way has more than halved over 20 years, from about 32% in 2006 to 15% by 2025. The hole is shrinking. It just does not close. So here's the lens to carry away. Most people think the danger in a currency trade is the exchange rate moving against them. That is market risk, and it's real, but it's bounded. You lose the price move. Settlement risk is a different animal entirely. It hides in the plumbing between two payments, and when it bites, it takes the whole principle. It took one collapsing bank in 1974 to reveal it, and it took an entire new institution, CLS, and the discipline of payment versus payment to tame it. And it has been tamed remarkably well. In that same 2025 survey, actual settlement fails were just 1/100% of all obligations. The system mostly works silently, which is exactly why almost no one has heard of the risk it was built to kill. But that stubborn trillion plus a day, still settling exposed, is a reminder that the plumbing is never finished. Next time you see a currency quote flicker, remember there are two payments behind it in two time zones, and a whole invisible machine making sure one can never happen without the other. For more of the machinery under the markets, stick around.